pushed me, I don't know, thinking I want to get to the next level and then like really focus on like what I do want to study. And so I think that's been, and then going to school here, of course, everyone really does motivate each other. So I think that's also, going to school here also is motivated.
Does Common Core address students who are non-native English speakers? Is there a, like, what do you do in an because English and math, what do you do with someone who native English isn't there?
That is not something we researched extensively on, but I know that in public schools, with or without Common Core, we have programs for those students in order basically to teach them in their native language. So we have accommodations for them. And I would say that for those students, success in English is probably not much of an option.
I think just since 1990, just a fact about white to black for high school diploma, it has receiving it has narrowed from 8 to 4%, and now Hispanic to white has narrowed from 32 to 21%. So it has gone down.
Which makes sense, like it's geared towards kind of minority groups or like the lowest level, so
Bringing
that
them
it's
up.
trying to bring them up. Yeah.
So how would you recommend we improve Common Core? Let's assume that it's here to stay for a while, but you said it does have some gaps. If you were on a committee to change it or edit it a bit, what would you add or take away?
Definitely begin with
State
history
level.
and,
Okay.
well, that is one.
Okay, I was going to say start definitely at the state level, because each state is different, of course. So.
But if you're saying that it's in place, there's nothing we can do about it, definitely history and science and the other subjects, the arts as well, need to be put into the system. In fact, when you take the arts out of schools, as my dad says, you're basically taking out what makes us human. The humanities are what make us human, and we need to put that back into schools. That's one thing. Also, dealing state by state, region by region even. I mean, within Kentucky itself, we have so many different demographics that it doesn't just fit overall.
I think involving teachers in making the standards is huge because they weren't really involved in this last Common Core standard. And I think giving them a little bit more freedom to teach to the people that they are teach to their demographic would better.
And I was just thinking when you said that, if their students aren't understanding, I think they just have to keep moving on. I don't think they really get to, really teach the kids if they're really not understanding.
Is there a plan, you mentioned this was implemented in 2010, is there a plan to assess the effectiveness of Common Core? So is there like a 10-year plan saying, okay, we're going to let this go for 10 years and then this is what we're going to do?
Right now, it kind of looks like it's here to stay. Year by year, though, they, again, with the testing, the standardized national testing, they're using that to kind of gauge how it's going. And I would say that they're going to work on improving it year by year, but as for a 50-year, 10-year plan, nothing really has been put
Do you
out
think
on
it'll
that.
change if a different president is elected?
Very
I
well possible.
imagine, because we did do a lot of research on the candidates, and they are very much across the board. And one statistic was just, even in the Republican Party, it's been known as a civil war to divide candidates on. So it is a really important issue right now, especially for the election coming up.
So with really Cruz and Trump being the two
Right.
viable candidates for the Republican Party, where do they stand?
Trump really disagrees, and he thinks education, the spending should be cut down. And then, of course, Sanders wants the free college, and so,
Did you say Cruz or Sanders?
Cruz.
sorry.
Sorry. No, you're fine.
And then Cruz, he wants to expand the school choice, but he does dislike Common Core.
So both Trump and Cruz are not in favor of Common Core.
Right, right.
What about the other side, the Democrats with Hillary and,
Sure.
Right.
and Bernie?
Clinton favors public school education, but she's fairly moderate. She calls it a real pillar of democracy, actually. Sanders, obviously, everyone knows about him wanting to enact free college tuition, but he actually dislikes standardized testing, which makes sense with the socialistic mindset and the inequality it produces. Yeah.
Is it high on any of their platforms? Is it something they're advocating for, or is it just, well, we should talk about education?
Right. In watching the debates, it's not something that's really commonly brought up. I know when Jeb Bush, though, was still in the race, there was a bit of contention with that because he actually supported it, and so the other Republican candidates kind of criticized him for that. But since that point in time, it's not something that's really, really high up on the list.
I will take it a little bit of a different way if you don't have a question right now. I guess I was doing some research just on just some basic math problems because I don't know if you've seen that, but just a second grade math problem. So the way we learn to subtract would be 43 minus 13, and you subtract from your 10th column, and you get 30. And so I wrote down the steps. I mean, first 3 minus 3 equals 0, 4 minus 1 equals 3, get your 30. So now the new way is you write first off horizontally your problem. So what you're going to do is this is all about making it easier for you. And my thing, the issue I have with subtraction is you're taking out subtraction, you're adding actually. And so you write horizontally, 13, you need to get to 15 because it's an easier number for the kids. So you're going to add 2, friendly number, right? And then 15, you're going to add 5 because you want to get to, your goal is to get to the next whole number every time. So you're going to 15 plus 5 equals 20, 20 plus your 10 equals 30, 30 plus 10 equals your 40. Well, you need to get to 43. So 40 plus your 3 equals 43. Then you're going to box these numbers, add them all up, and get your 30. And this is what second graders are supposed to do. And many just parents are against that because they didn't learn how to do that. And kids can be counted wrong if they get the right answer but didn't show the steps or didn't do it that way if they learn just fast facts. I have another example of just addition. 8 plus 5. We would know just fast facts. 13, we would know how to do that. Well, the new way is you would take your 5 and you would divide it into, they really do like 2. It's an easy number for the kids. So you would break it into 2. What to get to 5 would give you, you have to get, to get to 5, you would need 3. So you break that down. Your 8 and 2 you would add to get 10. Box your 3. 10 plus 3 equals your 13. So many teachers, if they do like it, say it's a way to really show kids what they're doing, how the steps are. But most parents are like, what is this? And just showing writing all the steps out is much, much different than fast facts.
Well,
So
fact
it's
of
a
the
little
matter,
bit different.
sorry.
No.
Fact of the matter is they're evading teaching the skill. Like instead of teaching
Right.
subtraction, they're just teaching addition.
And if they're supposed to do this on a standardized test, imagine how much longer that takes.
I was going to say
too.
the time on standardized testing, I mean, for ACT, 60 math questions in 60 minutes? So you're not going to have time to draw that out. And other ways that I didn't even really do that much research in for multiplication was drawing like lines on a graph, just like, or even like drawing circles to get to 70. You just draw these circles. And I mean, that's crazy amount of time that it would take
I
to
heard
do
a
that.
problem where it was like there's 18 students in a class, and if you were to count the students in a way, by a number that would get you to 90, so basically 18 times what equals 90, then like they would have to draw out 18 circles and 90 hash marks in those circles, and divide them between those circles. So what you could easily do in 2 steps, they're making it multiple steps.
So we're lowering the standard with Common Core because we have to teach to the lowest level, but yet we're changing it,
Right.
especially math here, so that a parent at home can't help.
It's a very
Their child.
convoluted way
Right.
because they want them to understand like the process and what they're doing.
Is that a bad thing?
No,
It really isn't, except you're teaching this, like when they're first learning to subtract, that's what you're teaching them. And I think math needs to be fast, at least enough, the common, just lower numbers. And I think they're gonna lose that skill because they're learning to do it maybe 3 different ways. And I just think that's crazy because they're so young to learn this.
and sometimes by working through the steps, you come to understand the concept and the process itself.
What I found interesting is that under the Common Core standards, students don't get a full, complete Algebra 1 class until high school, and they won't get any pre-calculus. So going into college, and for most colleges besides the 2-year state
Yeah.
college. That doesn't prepare them very well.
So we haven't seen yet, like teaching this type of math to second graders, we haven't seen how that's affecting like calculus and all of that.
Again, we have really mixed reviews. In some high schools, students are taking calculus as early as their sophomore year and they're doing great and there's not a problem. Other schools, it is a problem, and it's just, again, it kind of goes back to regional and economic differences. It kind of depends on student motivation, it depends on the teachers in the classroom, and there's just not a good baseline to compare things to.
Is there anything as drastic as the math skills on the English side of it? Is there anything they're teaching differently?
Not
I was
tremendously.
gonna say not quite as extreme,
Right.
honestly. Some of the sample questions.
Yes. Something else I'll mention with the English standards, they have gone away from fiction writing because they believe it is not useful, and they've gone towards factual, informative kind of essays, which certainly is important. But again, you are taking away the arts and you're taking away something that makes us human by pulling fiction out of schools. But something I will mention from the National Assessment of Education Progress, which is a subset of the Department of Education, they write the test for these standardized national exams. And one of their critical reading questions, the passage read, in 1917, New York followed the example of the Western states. In that same year, Jeanette Rankin of the state of Montana took office as the first United States Congresswoman. That's the question. This is a standardized test for 17-year-olds. That's the passage. The question that follows says, in what year did the first United States Congresswoman take office? A second or third grader could point that out. This is for 17-year-olds.
And they're saying that's awesome that they can figure that out. And I was just like, what?
Another-
It's crazy.
Another thing, if I can find it on here, talks about learning academic vocabulary within English text. And for high schoolers, they said these words are words such as ignite and commit. This is our academic vocabulary for 17 and 18-year-olds, and these are words that we were reading 3rd, 4th grade.
Somebody mentioned parents, and have parents sort of weighed in on the issue? How do they feel?
Yes.
I mean, I know that they're struggling with the math
Sure.
and things,
Right.
but what's their thoughts on?
Again, it was when it was first enacted, most parents hadn't even heard of it until it was already in their schools. So that caused a lot of controversy, and again, parents can't help their students with their math homework because even the parents don't understand this process that they're being taught.
And something I'll share with you, I actually have a parent basically took a picture of their student's homework and had written a note on it. And they sent it in to an online newspaper. And it reads, Dear Jack, don't feel bad. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in electronics engineering, which included extensive study in differential equations and other higher math applications. Even I cannot explain the Common Core mathematics approach nor get the answer correct. In the real world, simplification is valued over complication. And the problem involves 427 minus 316. And there's this crazy number line where you have to count backwards. But in the end, the parent says the process used is ridiculous and will result in termination if actually applied.
So who came up with this new math? Where did this come from?
Again, we mentioned Singapore earlier. Some of these math standards are coming out of Singapore and the concepts that they are using and applying. Actually, my younger brother attends public school, and in 5th grade he came home and his textbook said Singapore math. And so some of that is coming out of that country and the concepts they're applying there, which again may work there in a small country, but doesn't work well here nationwide with so much diversity.
So let's talk about this. We're comparing ourselves to other countries. Before Common Core, states were comparing themselves to other. Should we be doing that? Is that fair? I mean, what's your all's opinion on that?
A lot of the foreign countries who have Common Core are smaller than the United States, which for some of them it would work better because they're smaller and their demographic is not quite as large. Whereas the United States, when you have a national standard for such a large country, it tends to not work.
To a certain extent, I understand the concern because we have such a global economy and global market now, and we are fighting for jobs for people all over the world. And so, in comparing ourselves to other countries, I can understand that concern. Again, though, and we've mentioned this several times, the differences between our country in size and population and culture and expectations and motivation is so different that it's like apples and oranges. It's not a good comparison.
So we've simplified math. We've taken out creativity. We've stopped no more fiction writing. We've stopped asking people to actually infer knowledge and said it's just right there. In 25 years, what does America look like?
I think we're very much gearing towards a socialistic kind of environment. And again, that's kind of the ideological basis of this whole program, is the idea of it's not so much a matter of individual responsibility anymore, it's group working. In fact, I have a quote from somebody who wrote about Common Core, and he says it's a method of teaching math that eschews memorization, favors group work and student-centered learning, puts the teacher in the role of guide rather than teacher, and insists on students being able to explain the reasons why procedures and methods work for procedures and methods they don't even understand. So, to get back to your initial question, we are gearing towards this kind of group think, in essence, and moving away from individual thrift and hard work and responsibility.
So as a private school, should we get on board with that? Are we doing you all a disservice if we don't go along with that group think? Or should we continue to teach how we've always taught and include arts and other things?
I guess it probably would depend on each school, but I think we should continue doing like what we're doing, because I feel like we had a great education growing up here, and I think certain kids, like I said earlier, learn in different ways, and the arts are great for them, and I think that should be in every school. So I think honestly, maybe we should maybe look into it maybe a little bit more, because if it is the national standard, but I don't think we should fully adopt it here. For the younger kids.
For the sake of the ACT and the SAT, because it's going in that direction, yes, we need to take that into consideration. But I think you mentioned LCA doing a disservice to their students by not teaching Common Core. No, they are doing a service by not teaching it.
And if the standardized testings are being moved to fit the Common Core curriculum, I think that we will be fine compared to what English question that Katie mentioned and the math that Rebecca mentioned. Like, we can easily have done that in elementary school. So I think that we are fine.
Your question a little bit earlier when you said about in 25 years, one thing I just thought of was if people don't want to say no to kids and they don't want to say you're failing or you didn't get that right, I can't even imagine where we'll be in 25 years if we can't say no and teach them the right way. I can only see that just progressing, declining actually.
And we see this idea of the government doing things for us all over the place with like social welfare and stuff too. Now it's in education where people are expecting the government to give this to them and to kind of motivate them, and they don't have that self-motivation. So in 25 years, it's going to be the same. Like people won't have learned to be self-motivated, and there won't be any any person's own thoughts. It's going to be group thoughts.
Is there any way that people can support individual self-motivation? I mean, because Common Core, if you look at it, the reason state educators are going for it is because of funding. That's the primary motivation. So how do we as a nation encourage self-motivation for learning, for the love of learning? How do we do that?
Well, in reference to funding specifically, if we have organizations that favor individual responsibility and who are willing to give donations, that's something that can help with funding. We wouldn't need the government subsidies. We could pull from individual private organizations. There are a lot of small groups and writers and people who have popped up all across